what H did. So H was the only thing in town, so it went.
Yeah.
But it was, we had only 20 people, that was it.
Yeah.
So it kind of eased into it.
It was
Published.
the beginning of COVID.
Beginning of COVID.
I shouldn't have to
But
relive
he
it.
just, you know, you wouldn't, and I was thinking to myself,
I didn't have to relive.
when you eventually get
Okay, we're live.
economy back,
Here, when you're done, just stop it, alright?
will
Okay.
you
That's
change
for
people's
just
lives,
10:25.
or 3 weeks later, they'll completely forget about it all?
Good job.
So I can tell you it's about like overall, not the specifics, but overall, there is less talking now in shul than there was before. Not to say that there isn't plenty of talking in shul now.
Yeah.
But
Because a handful of people got it.
yeah.
That was one of the things I know that a lot of the pulpit reformers were still talking about. So it is going to take forever, to take generations.
Yes, as long as people are talking, people will be talking.
They were at.
Right. As long as people are talking, people will be talking.
Although there's some people who go now who didn't go before because the
So is this about like, or is one aspect of this about like putting different Seforim on top of others? So I remember overhearing somebody else asked Rabbi Semmel, you see people put Seforim on top of Chumashim all the time. Rabbi Semmel said, we're not makpid. Seforim have everything in them.
Expand.
Very, very interesting. I'll get to that.
And I remember as a little kid, it's like, no, you
We're going to talk about that. I see we have a poll here, but this is only third.
That's the thing, like it's got Chumash, but also throughout davening, you have from everywhere.
It's beautiful.
I think it was Rosh Hashanah.
It was like,
There was somebody that I know.
maybe the guy was asking about Seforim on top of others for not in Chumash, but I think it was Chumash.
Okay, good morning and a good in Chodesh. I'd like to thank everybody for coming, everybody for watching, and we have the Yontif of Shavuos coming, and I was trying to think of a share to give about the Yontif of Shavuos. I went through what we've done in the past few years. We've covered a lot of the, Shavuos is a one-day Yontif, unless you go into just basic Hilchos Yontif. We talked about the halachas of flowers, halachas of staying up all night,
Hilchos cheesecake.
halachas cheesecake, exactly. We've gone to Rabbi Sharfman has, I think, had multiple shurim about cheesecake. So at a certain point, you have to expand your horizons for Shavuos. And when you think about what Shavuos is, obviously the fundamental moment, Klal Yisrael receiving the Torah, it's Man Matan Torah Seinu, obviously is such an important date on the calendar. But there's another picture of Shavuos, and people a lot of times connect Shavuos and Simchas Torah. There are a lot of similarities. There are questions. Why do we need to celebrate both? What exactly are them? But we all know the scenes on Simchas Torah of a person dancing with the Sefer Torah. Obviously, that's a personal highlight. That's what we do. Everyone dances around the Sefer Torah. In fact, I just was in the Bells Grand Shul in Yerushalayim. If anyone has seen the Bells, some call it the Beis HaMikdash. Huge shul.
Is that Meir Shurim?
It's not. It's in. It's past Geula, near Rehov Yirmiyahu. But this beautiful shul. It's packed, thousands and thousands of people. They have no room there on Simchas Torah. You know what Simchas Torah is? Literally, talk about working out for the Gabbais. They literally, no one. There's the only one who dances is the Rebbe. Okay, it's a Chassidish. But basically, they pass the Sefer Torah around the masses. You have the Sefer Torah for a minute, then you pass it on to the person next to you, and the person next to you, and the person next to you. So the Torah moves, the people don't move, except for the Rebbe dancing. There's no room. But that picture. What is Simchas Torah? Simchas Torah is a person holding a Sefer Torah and dancing. You might have seen in recent years another phenomenon in the yeshiva world. Sometimes you'll find in Simchas Torah, a bacher will get up and he'll grab a sefer, right? And he'll dance with the Sefer, right? Baharavna made famous a Bacher dancing with his Gemara. But yeshivas, person would dance with a Ksos, a Rashba, Kedushas, whatever they're excited about, they'll dance with the Sefer. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Obviously, we'll talk in a moment. You know, this dancing with the Sefer Torah, not the same thing dancing with the Sefer. But we are the people of the book. And more recently, we are also the people of the printed book. Ever since printing presses were invented, really before that, because you could write it down too. But Jews are always in the forefront of printing Seforim. And we'll talk in a moment about the allowance for that today. But the Jews are definitely the people of the book. I saw some news tidbit. You know, they're very into having these auctions now. Judaica. And I believe it shattered all records in the secular world for the highest auction book of all time. Just, I think, last week. Maybe someone can tell me the numbers. Huh? No, not that. But there was some old print edition. Maybe it was written. But it wasn't a Sefer Torah. It was a Chumash. I believe it went for tens and tens of millions of dollars. I think I remember the number 80. Not bad. A Sefer? $80 million? Yeah.
You can dance with that in simplicity.
You could dance with that. Maybe inside a case.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is, you know, we treasure our Seforim, we treasure our books. Today there's more Seforim printed than ever before. There's so many Seforim, so much, right? Could ask the Talmidim to schlep back Seforim from Eretz Yisrael. Like it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. I saw another thing someone showed me. They recently gave a tour to some people of the Lakewood Yeshiva. So randomly, the person in charge of the Yeshiva library pulled out a sefer and showed it to the people. It was a sefer Pnei Yeshua, which is a famous achron from Frankfurt, right? Way back before Shlomo Hirsch. Pnei Yeshua. Well, what was interesting about this edition of Pnei Yeshua is if you look who owned it, it's quite fascinating. They showed it was owned by someone named Akiva Eger.
Wow. Some guy named Akiva.
It was Rev Akiva Eger's own Pnei Yeshua. This is the sefer that the Gaon looked in, worked in.
This is what they call in the auction business provenance.
Yes.
Right. If the watch was owned by, Jack Nicklaus.
Yes,
worth a lot
yes.
more money.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's not just an old print Pnei Yeshua, it's Pnei Yeshua that was owned by Rav Akiva Eger. And randomly, I don't know the story behind it, how the yeshiva got it, but, you know, the Lakewood Yeshiva, somehow that sefer traveled, just think of the mileage on these things, traveled from Europe through the ages, ended up in Lakewood, New Jersey. I remember years ago in Yeshiva in Queens, they were going through old Seforim, right? If anyone knows the old building in Queens, there is a place called the Cave. The Cave was this magical spot, right? There was some storage in the cave. There was a JEP office. They did some kiruv in the cave. People put in tefillin. They came out davening sometimes. There was also a tzaddik who davened in the cave. We're not going to go through all the amazing elements of the cave back in Queens. But the cave, they had boxes, they had old stuff there. I found I didn't find it myself, but I didn't see it. But my father told me he saw it once. They're going through the cave, and they found old mishaburas. Okay, it's very nice. Except, what was interesting was in this mishabura was handwritten that it was checked that there are no mistakes, no printing mistakes. And you know who signed it?
The
Chavetz Chaim himself. The Chavetz Chaim himself was known for being so makpid when he sold the sefer to look into it they shouldn't sell a sefer which has a printing mistake. Printing mistakes are common, happens. It'll be shortchanging the person if you buy, a sefer, and especially in those days, they didn't have return shipping. Someone could be passing through Rada and bought a set of Mishnah Berurah, and he ain't gonna be in Rada never again. So this guy was makbid to try to look and see if every sefer he sold was perfect. And after it would be, he would check it, he would write on it. They found the sefer with the Chavetz Chaim's, Yeshiva got from Hefker, they somehow got, who knows. They ended up.
So something, we're noting that when a sefer wears out, we bury it.
Yes.
Does a sefer like that was owned, used by somebody far greater than any of us, does it have an extra kedusha to it? Like, do you put it in a glass bookcase?
It's a very interesting question.
Or do you like give it to everybody?
The question being asked on the floor is, do we attribute a higher level of kedusha to a sefer that was used by a great person? Right, yeah. If you find the sefer used by the Chavetz Chaim, or my other story, you find the sefer by Reb Kiva Eger, does that give it more kedusha? Does that deserve more kavod? So it's interesting. I haven't seen this in print. I haven't seen this Shiloh. My netiya would be that one should treat that with a higher level of kedusha. But let me first play out the basic issue at hand. We'll see. But very, very good point.
My question is really like, what is covered for that sefer?
Yes.
Putting it aside or using it.
So yes.
Just like a corollary to what he's saying, which is more beautiful, a library that has all brand new Seforim all the way around, or Seforim that were all used because they were actually used?
It sounds like you're asking a question about our new base matters opening up. We hope soon. But the new base matters comes with a beautiful, extensive new set of Seforim. But you're right. You're measuring new Seforim versus well-used Seforim. They used to say in Queens, on the wooden floor, you see that spot? That's the indentation or a Luban made from pacing too much on that spot. That's what they used to say. But yes, something well used.
Don't make a new one.
Something well used, has something in it. It's kedusha in the walls. No question about it. Well, let's first analyze the whole issue of what kedusha, what kavod do printed Seforim have. Now, let's start from the beginning. In the beginning, there were two Torahs. Moshe Rabbeinu got Yom Tov Shavuos, got the Torah Shebiksav from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was not just the tablets, but that was the written Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Torah. There also was the Torah Shebal Peh. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu transmitted to Moshe Rabbeinu all the real Torah, right? Which we assume that's what's printed today. But all that Torah, through all the ages, the Torah Shebal Peh, Moshe Rabbeinu got at Har Sinai. He also got Halach Moshe B'Sinai, other things. But, so it was a two-part system. There's going to be a part of the Torah that's going to be written, and a part that will be given over. We could, talk about this topic, unto itself. Well, the whole transmission of the Torah, but really part of the idea. Why do you need a Torah Shebal Peh? Because part of the Torah is learning from a Rebbe to a Talmud, passing a Masorah one generation to the other. It's not just here's the written Torah and you interpret it the way you want to interpret it. Not true. There's a Torah Shebal Peh, and even after, we mark every year during the fast days, the tragedy that we had in history to write the Torah, translate the Torah to the Goyim, and now you could find the Old Testament, in many languages, but they don't have the Torah Shebal Peh. comes to mind. You know, don't try this at home. But I was once put in a situation where I found myself. I was put into the situation. I didn't ask for this, but there is a what's he called? A missionary who was debating, and I was thrown in to debate this missionary. So okay, I was a young guy, and whatever.
You got to be prepared for that.
So they're trained, and they have all these different proofs, and they're
Isaiah.
right. They start quoting this and that. Right. They have psukim and this. So what I would play with them, I hear this. I said, how do you know what that's what it means? Right? You're reading the Old Testament. How do you know that's what it means? I said, hey, Shakespeare, writes a book, and there's unlimited interpretations. Do you think that's what God did for the Old Testament? He wanted to be like Shakespeare's writings, up to everyone's interpretation? No. We understand. We have an oral tradition of how to explain each and every verse in the Old Testament, in the Torah. So, you're asking me a contradiction between this and that. Great, you know what? The Gemara deals with this. We have answers for this. It's not a question. And he had nothing to say. Doesn't know. Yeah, now nowadays, there's a shallow too. Art scrolls. You've translated the Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's printed and it's translated. Art scrolls have to be very smart in different passages of the Gemara, translating them, and for those who know, different passages of the Gemara, omitting them. Art scroll does not have everything in shots printed. There are Gemaras that were censored over the decades.
Oh, yeah.
You would not find that in an Art Scroll Gemara.
The Vilna Shas has been censored.
Most editions of the Vilna Shas, but as my guys in Shir know, you could find the spots if you know the right editions. There are editions of the Vilna Shas out there that have it all. Yes. Now, so it was set up, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, together with the Torah Sheba'al. That's all that we're celebrating on Shavuos, both Torah Sheba'al and Torah Sheba'al Peh. We got them both. Now, straight up, we understand, okay, it's a big deal. How do we have a right to write over the Torah Sheba'al Peh? So that's an idea the Gemara talks about of Eis Lasos LaHashem Nefir Sorsecha. There are certain situations in life which the power is given over to the rabbis. A pretty major clause in our in our tradition, our halacha, that the rabbis, obviously it has to be the Bezdin HaGadol, the leaders of the generation, but they have the right, more usually b'shev al das and not necessarily b'kum v'aseh, but to override and permit things which otherwise would be usher for the survival of the Jewish people. Within our galus, it was obviously clear that, hey, if we can't just rely on the oral tradition, things are going to get lost. And we know through the ages, things have gotten lost. They say Sephardim, especially the Yemenites, might have a better tradition and Masorah than we do. And there are a lot of things through the ages that got lost because it's Rebbe to Talmud, but what happens if that Talmud got killed? From the Crusades, through the Holocaust, through all the ages. There's so many, when our Rishonim were writing these Seforim, who knows what's going on outside? The blood libels, the Crusades, everything, right? We just said Avarachamim, right? By Rosh Chodesh pension. Why? Because the Crusades were this time of the year. Same period, it's eerie, but the same period of the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva dying, it's the same period where they had these crusades, they wrote that Tefillah Avarachim, even though you don't normally say by Shabbos Mavarchim, because this was the time it was Masakin, this is what the blood was spilling in the streets now. That's why we say it. So you can imagine through those ages, things would get lost. And the foresight that our Chachamim had, that we have to write down the Torah Sheba'al Peh. We have the right to do it because of this concept of Eis Lasos LaHashem, and the Torah Sheba'al Peh was written. Really with that, even Torah Shebiksav, the ideal way of Torah Shebiksav is supposed to be written is like a Sefer Torah. It's on cloth, Ksav Ashuris, with ink. The idea of printed Chumashim is also not the ideal, seemingly part of Eis Lasos Lasha. So when we talk about the Kedusha of our printed Seforim, we have to realize, obviously our printed Seforim, Pashtas, are one Madriga removed from a Sefer Torah. Sefer Torah, that's the ideal way. Okay, that's the way a Sefer Torah is supposed to be written. But to have a printed Chumash is not the same. And certainly our printed books also not the same. Yes?
Since extended even further now with more modern, when we're dealing with, last we talked about Maizmanim, but now when you're dealing with Torah Anytime, Shabbat.com, all of the,
Jewish sites. Right.
Websites, apps, the OU with all of these apps. That
On your phone, you can have Kol Torah Kula.
Right. I mean,
We are people of the digital book.
Is that not even a further extension?
So I'm going to see that in a moment. I'll take you there in 1 second. Excellent point. Right? I was talking about the printed book. They're really bringing up, Rabbi, you should be more up to date. The people of the digital book. Yes. Art Scrolls.
As soon as it's on your screen, you can never stroll away.
Yes.
It'd be real hard to use that Shavuos now.
Yes. Now, right. That's why I always say, even with all the digital books, you're going to need to buy Seforim, because what happens on Shabbos and Yom Tov? And to be honest, even the digital libraries, everyone's raves to me about the digital libraries. I'm sorry. Someone who knows Seforim, the digital libraries haven't come close. They do a lot. There's a lot there, but to understand what the Jewish... I'll give you one small example. I'm staring at it right here. Here's a Sefer that was printed out. It wasn't so long ago, 15, 20 years ago. Nobody knows the Sefer existed. The way the Seforim business is, you print a Sefer, you put X amount of copies. Most Seforim, even if it's a bestseller and produced, many, many copies, doesn't necessarily mean it's reproduced a decade later, definitely 2 decades later, 3 decades later, and a Sefer which is hugely popular that you grew up with, you can't find anywhere today. Right? These things happen. And these wonderful libraries that exist, whether it's Bar Ilan or Otzar HaChachma, all these Sefaria, all these things that they have are far, far, far from anything near what the real Jewish library is. No comparison. So don't think you buy that, you have every Sefer. You have a lot. You have a lot of things what the average person might need, but you don't have everything. So I like what really inspired me also about this share. I came across a piece which, again, you don't find this. A tshuva from Reb David Feinstein. So, he passed away. I believe he wrote a lot, and I assume over the next decades, hopefully the family will publish his tshuvas. But when he was nifter, there were probably, when we gave a share about this, probably a handful, maybe a dozen of in-print tshuvas from him. Very, very few. So I came across an interesting share. If you look on the bottom right of your page, I'll get back to other stuff on top after. But he has a very interesting chakira. He writes, Yishlacher yish al zeh shem ksiva. Nowadays, when we write Seforim, is that considered really a written sefer? Rashi also looked at Be'inyan Zeh Mishum Kedushas Ashuras Sefer V'dayo. Right? You can't write a chumash ideally without Ksav Ashuras, cloth, ink. Nowadays that we're allowed to write Seforim based on this clause, this halacha of Eis Lasos, Nikra Ksiva, V'yishem Kedushas Madrigas Chumash V'nah. Nowadays that I have a chumash, does that really have the kedusha of a Sefer Torah, or similar to a Sefer Torah? Oh, me'achar shel nitna v'likosev. Rak the Kedushas shel Ashuris Sefer V'dayo. Ideally, you're supposed to have all these things. In Nichtavu Shlo Kazeh Nisha Bal Peh Avachshav. Really, nowadays a chumash would be no different than a Gemara. Rak Shemut Bal Peh Mitam Eis Lasos. That chumash that's sitting right there. Is that a chumash in halacha? Is that like a Sefer Torah? Or do you say no? It's the same thing as Gemara. Once the rabbis permitted us to print Seforim, right? How do I view a chumash, a printed chumash? Does it have a higher kedusha than the other Seforim? Or do I say no? Once it's printed, look, the reason why we wrote down Torah Shabbat Peh, Eis Lasos Hashem. The reason why we're allowed to write a chumash without these things is also some element of Eis Lasos. We need more chumashim. We can't just have Sefer Torah. It's not enough. We want people to be able to learn by themselves. So Memela, does it have the same kedusha, with it the same kavod, or not? But before the end of this year, we'll get to practical nafkaminas. Yes?
If a chumash has a printing error, does it make it possible?
Interesting question, right? If a sefer has a printing error, right? It's not the same thing as a Sefer Torah that we would possible it. But it's a very good point. You brought up before about Geniza, about treating things well. You know, you can have situations where the printing job was a bad job, and no one's going to use that sefer. But it doesn't mean you can just throw it out. We'll see. Now hold on. I'm watching the clock, and we did start a little late, so I want to move quicker. So this Chakira, which Rav Feinstein sets up, really, if you look through it, there are people on both sides of the equation. I'll quickly show through. There's a Mishabura here in Siman Mem regarding Hilchos Tefillin, but the Chavetz Chaim applies Huadin Chumashim O Sidrei Tefillah O Shar Svarim being Miksiva being Medefus, whether it was handwritten or whether it was printed. Hakol Yesh Bem Kedusha. Everything has Kedusha. We didn't Kli B'tov Kli. In terms of sometimes you do something which we would label as an embarrassing act or not a kavadika act, right? Then, in order to protect the sefer, to take a sefer into a bathroom, what you need is a double covering. It has to be kli b'tov kli. So practically speaking, if you're in the airport, and your sefer is inside your suitcase. So inside a suitcase is one covering. What's your second covering? So he's going to write Filim Ksav Tisha. It's not the Ksiva Sefer Torah. The Krichas HaSefer Eina Nachsheves L'Kisoy. Some people will say, look, I have the cover of the Sefer. So the cover of the Sefer is one, and my suitcase is a second. Chavetz Chaim says that doesn't work. Why? The cover of a sefer is considered really part of the sefer. So you need a secondary covering on top of that. So practically speaking, what that would mean is if you have a sefer inside a plastic bag, inside your suitcase, then you're okay. If you have, something, a maramakum, you put it inside an envelope, and you put that in your pocket,
You fold it?
you're okay. Yes, 100%.
Just folding is good enough?
Oh, no, it means just folding over. Or not. That's the same thing as a cover.
When you're saying the cover of the sefer, you're talking
Right?
about the binding?
But if you maybe put a separate piece of paper, that might be interesting. It's like an envelope.
Yeah. Rabbi's talking about the binding.
Binding.
So, again, to go back to Art Scroll, almost every book that you get from Art Scroll, it has the laminated thing, but
You
that
mean
only
the
helps
paper
with
cover.
Yeah, but that only helps with the binding itself. That doesn't wrap
Yeah,
around
that's
the
very
book.
interesting. Would the paper cover on a sefer, would that be considered a second covering? That's very interesting. I'm not sure. But hold on. I want to.
That can't possibly be helpful.
But look at the next side. That was just giving you one nafkamina for kedusha of a sefer, for kavod of a sefer, not taken to a bathroom, not to have it in places where you're going to do things which would be degrading to the sefer. So the sefer needs to be covered. 2 layers of covering. and the cover doesn't work. The Ayin B'Yeridea Siman Rekiv Eger. B'Taz Sham. Shekasav called Mekel B'Kedushas Seforim HaNitfasim. Anyone who was Mekel and published Seforim, the Taz already was talking about this. Asid Litin Es Adin. The Defus Havi Kamon Ksiva. Taz warned strongly, if you're Mekel about printed Seforim, you have a price to pay. At the Chuvas Chavas Yar, not the Lahako. Chavas Yar says, no, you can be Mekel. B'zeh. B'shas L'chak. If you don't want to cover it, you can be Mekel. So you see from the Mishnah Berurah, and I'll show you soon, our Shulchan bring the same major machlokas achronim. Practically, how do we view printed Seforim? The Taz says you have to treat printed Seforim with full kedusha. Don't be mekel, big deal. Chavas Yar says no. B'shas L'chak, if you're stuck, maybe you could. I saw some interesting story of some Jew who was knowledgeable. But he was learning in Panovich Yeshiva. He was an outsider. He was learning in Panovich, and there's no room there. Those who saw what Kananahara, Panovich-based manor, it's packed. And he had another sefer, no place to put it. So this fellow, knowing the Chavos Yar, when you're stuck, Shas L'chak, you don't have to view our printed Seforim as the same level of Kedusha. So this person put his printed sefer on the floor. There was no room. Just had a stender, know this, put on the floor. Let's just say he was accosted by the guys around him, like, what are you doing? Oh, you mean, it was a Chavos Yar. Like, the guy seemed knowledgeable. But you have to understand how to apply it, buddy. Not so simple. Right?
I have a question. What about on the floor of your car?
Very interesting question. Right. Because where do you put a sefer in one's car? It's tricky to put it on the seat where someone's sitting on the same bench. It's also not so simple. So very, very good point. What people sometimes do is try to stand it up. So
Still on the floor.
right, no, on the bench.
On the seat. Yeah.
Yeah, but these things are not so simple. But hold on. Let me jump.
Just a clarification for what you just said.
Yeah.
When you're talking about two covers, are you talking about a cover you can see through, like a clear plastic? Or
Yeah, clear plastic would be fine.
Clear plastic.
Two covers. It does not. The cover does not have to be dark. It could be plastic.
You can
100%.
still see your safer.
Yes, 100%. That works.
You don't have to put a velvet mantle on your books.
Right. It's nice.
That
Right.
would be beautiful.
It would be.
It would start a new industry.
They actually do that for the
We can make a lot of money.
Ed. There is an industry already. You're a little behind the curve.
Oh,
When they
sorry.
give a child their first sitter,
I know.
the first thing they do,
Yeah.
they put a velvet thing, they put a nice cover in it, they work in it.
I remember my
beautiful
children's
thing.
sitter presentation.
It's beautiful, beautiful.
They have to figure out how to-
Now, the Aruch HaShulchan, though, he brings, I have here in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, he does bring the same machlokas, Taz, and Chavas Yar. However, in Reish Pei Beis and also in Reish Pei Gimel, the Aruch HaShulchan leans highly on the tzad that our modern Seforim do not have the same Kedusha, because it's printed. Printed sefer is less, and therefore there's room to be mekel. That is how the Aruch HaShulchan paskins. Now, with that, what that would mean, not that there's no Kedusha, but one very simple nafkamin according to the Aruch HaShulchan. According to the Aruch HaShulchan, Alan, you mentioned this before. You have this many times on a Shabbos morning. You'll see a person go to the shelf, and I'll take two Seforim out, a siddur and a chumash. And many times people will just, by nature, put the siddur on top of the chumash. They're sitting, also they have a small spot. They're not going to put the chumash on the floor, but they put the siddur on top of the chumash. According to this Aruch HaShulchan, that would be okay. Because since nowadays this is a printed sefer, doesn't have the same Kedusha as a full-blown Sefer Torah. So, according to Aruch HaShulchan's view, they're all in the same playing field. All printed Seforim in the same playing field. And so it's a type of thing that if you see someone doing it, it's not one of those things to jump the guy with, according to the Aruch HaShulchan. He has who to be somech on. Right? If the guy puts it on the floor, I hear in Panovich why they jumped the guy.
And also no problem to kill a mockingbird on top.
Right. However, I did find in this tshuva from David Feinstein, David Feinstein does find a Magen Avram. Magen Avram is in Arachaim Siman Shin Lamed Aleph, that seems to hold that there still is Kedusha and a higher level of Kedusha to a printed Chumash. And therefore, Rav David Feinstein says, granted as an Aruch HaShulchan, but the Magen Avram outranks him. Magen Avram was earlier, a greater Achram. So, Rav David Feinstein says, I would pass like the Magen Avram over the Aruch HaShulchan. I would be careful with the Kedusha of a printed Sefer. That is what he writes. I heard that Rav Shlomo Zalman also passed in the same way. Now, another point, interesting. Somebody mentioned to me about the siddur. How do you treat a siddur? It's very interesting. A siddur, so you'll say a siddur is a printed sefer, seemingly no different than a Gemara. A Chumash, okay, over here, according to the Magen Avram, a Chumash takes precedence over a siddur. It's a greater Kedusha. But what about a siddur in the Gemara? One would think pashas are the same. Except people want to argue, right? Even a siddur has mostly Tehillim in it. A lot of our davening is Tehillim. That's part of Tanakh.
As the Shema.
People say, you look in the back of modern day Siddurim, they can have potentially even the whole Tehillim, like an art scroll Siddur does. Yeah. Plus it has Kriyas Torah for Mondays and Thursdays, Shabbos afternoon. So it has some Chumash. Chumash.
The full Chumash even.
So that would for sure be called the Chumash. But so I saw a modern postscripts debate exactly how to define our modern Siddurim. Pashas is viewed as a Siddur, not as a Chumash. But there are those, right? Rachmil, you just quoted me a posek who said, no, maybe you look at a Siddur also like that. Lamaisa, right? For the record, I saw where Nissen Karel takes that opinion. Well, I saw Chaim Kanievsky and others say no, it does not have the same din. Interesting idea, also very relevant. When you have a lot of Seforim, you also have a lot of things to clear up. Shuls, yeshivas all have issues of piles and piles of Seforim. That's actually why the smart places, it's not good to have a flat surface in a shul in the base medrash because it gets dumped on.
So it's the
right?
I have a lot of them.
You can't ask any question in the design of the new base medrash. Right? They did not use rocket scientists for that one. But, so you have things pile up. Rebbe Yalshuv says a very important psak. He says when you're cleaning up Seforim, because relatively you hope it's a short time you're making these piles, so you put it back on the shelves, you do not have to be makbid to put the chumash on top of the siddur and this. But Yalshuv says for that type of situation, just throw them all up, put them on the shelves. What we're talking about is a broader usage, a broader person keeping a siddur on top of a chumash and the like. Yes.
Is it halakhically required to kiss a chumash or a siddur that drops to the floor?
Excellent question.
Or
right?
Is it just a mimic?
Is it halakhically, the question posed was, is it halakhically required to kiss a siddur that falls on the floor? So I'll give you bigger than that. Interesting halakha. This happens. You're davening Shmones, right? You drop your siddur. What do you do next? No Shmones, right? And let's say you really fumble it, right? I'm standing right here. I'm holding my siddur. Maybe the guy in front of me was shuckling a little too much, or he finished Shmones a little before me. He took a few steps back right into my siddur. My siddur falls 2 feet over there. What do I do now? Now, if the guy finished with us, you let him go and pick it up. No. But let's say the guy's just shuckling away.
You want to drop it in the first place.
Right. What do you do? Listen. Mi ikar hadin, you could continue davening Shemona Esrei with the siddur on the floor. You don't have to pick it up.
Can
you could.
Then you're davening from memory.
In Achanami.
Yeah.
True. Right? But you are allowed to daven by heart. Okay, it's better to daven with the siddur, but yeah. Technically, if there's no one else there and it doesn't bother you, practically speaking, in the middle of Shemona Esrei, talking to Hashem, you don't have to move. However, if it would bother your davening, then you could take those steps, pick it up, and go back to your Shemona Esrei.
You don't have to start from the beginning.
No, but you would be allowed to move, even in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, to do that. Just for another record, we're talking about moving. If you have a shaila, right? Today was Rosh Chodesh. You're Mesupik. What's the halacha? I forgot y'all the other. What should I do? So ArtScroll made it easy. They also have that in the back of your set, right? But they don't have all. They have a good amount.
Good amount. Yeah.
But if you have a real tough shaila, you're even allowed in the middle of Shemona Esrei to go to the shelf, start pulling off for halacha sefer, and start going through it. So people think you're locked. You're not the Kohen Gadol. You're not the Baal Tefillah, in Yom Norayim, where you're watching his feet. He doesn't move. You are allowed to move in certain circumstances. One to pick up a sitter, one for shiloh. It's very interesting.
If you walk out of Shemona Esrei to the parade.
Yes. You even ask a shiloh. But yeah. Anyway, fascinating. We'll go through the rest of Hilchos Tefillah. But what I do think you see from there, the Chofetz Chaim does allow for one to pick up the sitter to move because it's very meaningful for him and bothers him that the sitter's on the floor, and it will bother your Shemona Esrei. How can I daven when the sitter's on the floor? That's how much we care about the kavod. One would be allowed to pick it up, and huadin to give it a kiss, 100%. The Chofetz Chaim does talk about kissing mitzvos that a person does. Like when you finish using, we walk out of the sukkah to kiss the sukkah, finish using your luv and esrog at the end of the Yom Tov, give it a kiss. There is an emotional attachment one should have to a mitzvah. And yeah, the idea of kissing a sitter, not just when it falls on the floor, but even after you finish using it, there's something to it. But let me just end off with one interesting halacha. And this I find fascinating. So we saw the Rebbe Feinstein says ideally we should try to treat, a chumash with a higher level of kedusha over a siddur, over other Seforim. I saw most poskim say you don't have to start lining up generation by generation. Okay, here are the Rishonim, here are the Achronim. Rabbi Akiva Eger comes after the B'nai Yeshua, right? He was before him, but on top of the Aruch HaShulchan. You don't have to be that specific, though. Rabbi Yosef says it's a neat thing to do. It's a good history lesson, right?
Up on top of the bookshelf.
Yeah, it's a cute thing. Instead of your kid playing with blocks, you could show them, the generations.
So you're saying the pyramid-like stacks in Queens are okay?
Yes. But
when I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yes.
That means they have to be.
But I'll show you an interesting psak. I might have said this by the Rav David Feinstein share, but I'll show you a very interesting psak. Rav David Feinstein says the following. Rav David Feinstein says, okay, I'm going to pass them like the Magen Avram. You should have your chumash on top of your siddur. But you know what? You could put a nach on top of a chumash. You could put a nach on top of your chumash. Rabbi, what are you saying? He says nach is greater. You look on the bottom left column. V'nirli losif sheish kedusha nach al chumash hanitfasim. There's a greater kedusha to a nach than a printed chumash. What's his logic? He quotes a different Magen Avram. But Magen Avram tiretz l'mad koron haftorah toch nach hanitfas b'makvin al shel klaf v'zein shaykh es lasos. Right? The fact that we say halacha l'maisa, are we allowed to read the haftorah from a chumash, from a nach? The answer is yes. Right? There are places which are makdeh to have a klaf, but me'ikar adin, 100%, you could be yotzei the haftorah by reading a printed nach. That means a printed nach works on the highest level, to be yotzei 100%. Or David argues, right? Because of nach l'tzibur. Amim shem navi anitfas yishu kedushas navi mamish she'im psul shanir b'navi v'chein tzar kalila. You don't need ksav ashuras. You don't need your printed. You don't need your cloth Navi could work without a cloth. Avol Sefer Torah tzar cloth. Or we pass him a Sefer Torah can't read from a chumash. You need a cloth. Imkei Navi Adiv Shu Kadosh Mamish V'lo Mitzad Eis Lasos. All our printed Seforim only have Kedusha because of this din Eis Lasos LaHashem, but not innately. A Nach innately has Kedusha because I could use this for the Torah. So therefore, Reb David Feinstein says you could put a Nach on top of a printed Chumash. Psak that nobody else, I don't think, ever printed such a psak, but quite fascinating. I'll take the questions, but I'd like to wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful week, a good Chodesh, and should have a wonderful Yontif of Zaman Matan Torasenu for new appreciation of what it means to be the people of the book.
Rabbi Sharfman poskined something very unusual.
Yes, let me
I
hear.
had a long conversation with him about this once. He said that